Hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo bien? ¿Ça va? Welcome to episode number 17 of the What's Going On podcast. Wie geht's? Apfelstrudel. Yeah, that's right. We've been learning languages. I've been going crazy on Duolingo recently. I've got like a 26-day streak now. I'm learning Romanian and Hungarian. I'm taking sides. And today I'm joined by a very, very special guest, an author and a war journalist. It's Hollie Mckay, someone who's travelled around to parts of the world where I'm too scared to even look at a map of. She's been to places like Afghanistan, Syria, Burma, all over the map. And I hope that you enjoy this episode of the podcast because it was very special.
Welcome everybody to the What's Going On podcast, and today I'm very happy to be joined by Hollie Mckay. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
So my first question for today is, what was your first project as a war journalist, and what were your thoughts kind of going into this?
The first place that I wasn't actually, I was a journalist, but I wasn't specifically covering war at the time. I was just traveling a lot and I sort of fell into that. But it was actually in the Middle East and I was covering parts of Syria. And
Yeah.
it was sort of when things had just started to boil over and I didn't really understand it. I didn't I didn't know what to expect. I was just kind of backpacking, doing my thing. And so that's sort of how I fell into it and trying to understand sort of multiple sides of something that felt very far away, yet so relevant at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, and that really, kind of gave me an appetite for wanting to learn more about the world and all these people and places that I didn't know about that I really felt like I should. And then if I didn't know about it, then there was certainly so many other people who didn't know about it. And
Yeah.
so that sort of started my foray into this genre of journalism.
Yeah. Okay. And were you kind of freelancing at first, or did you work with like a agency to do your first few stories?
Yeah, I worked at Fox at the time and I was sort of a general assignment reporter. So I was based in LA. So it was very much, I did a lot of entertainment because it was LA, and then I may cover a courthouse.
Yeah.
I may then go and do some sort of investigative story. So it was very across the board. And I had a lot of freedom with that. And then, the world stuff just sort of fascinated me most. And so at the time that I was sort of traveling, I was traveling on my sort of vacation, but then I was able to kind of parlay a lot of that into my work. And then eventually it took some time to kind of
Yeah.
transition, but then sort of transition into covering more sort of investigative / world stories.
Was it unusual at first, like going from like a general reporter in LA to go and like into reporting about war in the Middle East, or did you find it easy to kind of like adjust?
Yeah, I found it easy. I think from the outset, people think it's so difficult, but for me, I was hired, I was sponsored to work in the US. I'm Australian. I was 20, so I was very young.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I was sort of doing with my life then. And I never looked at sort of general assignment or the entertainment world necessarily as what I wanted to be doing. It always just felt like a stepping stone to something else or a training ground for something else to me. And I think I felt a little bit guilty about that because sort of to the outsider, you have this dream job.
Mm.
You've got this platform, you're going to the best events and parties. And this is all sort of predating social media. So you really had to be on the ground. You couldn't be doing your job from Twitter or whatever. And you couldn't, also, we didn't know these high profile personalities the way that we know them now. And so it really was a journalist's job to sort of dig down and often go deeper. And so I really just looked at it as a training ground. And I think it really was a great training ground because it really teaches you to have to hold your own and to navigate through, these massive teams of people
Yeah.
to get the story that you need. And so, I didn't find the switch to be that difficult because I'd already, I'd already had several years of journalism under my belt. I knew what was required to be, a good journalist. And I think, I'd like to say that a good journalist can cover anything. Oftentimes you'll see that, with other foreign correspondents, they can maybe decide they don't want to travel anymore, or they need to be home for their family, or for whatever reason, and you can throw them into the metro beat or throw them into some other beat that seems really far-flung, but the core principles are the same. And
Yeah.
so you have to have the ability to adapt.
And when you go to a war zone or to a place of conflict, what are some of the things that you have to ensure to protect yourself and to keep safe? What's like the most important things for you?
Yeah, I think it's having a team around you of trustworthy people, and that can be really hard, especially as a writer when you're often working alone.
Yeah.
And maybe you're going to a country that you haven't covered before, and there's conflict happening, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of uncertainty, and you're trying to find the right people to help you get to the stories and achieve what you need to achieve. But that can be really challenging because you don't know. And so, you're often relying on word of mouth.
Yeah.
There's really no way of vetting people. Maybe the way there is here, there's no sort of, criminal background check system. So you really have to use your instinct and trust, and you need to, hope that you can get referrals, and that's why it's important, I think, for other journalists, to support each other and to give each other guidance and advice and tips, because that's really what you rely on. So I think really the number one thing is ensuring that you have a team who's going to sort of care for you and protect you and put your well-being ahead of wanting to scam money or any number of things that can potentially happen. So the team around you is everything, and it's even though you're working independently as a writer, you still have to rely on maybe a translator or a fixer or a driver or just other people. So it is still a team effort.
And when you go to, let's say, these places, and especially for a long period of time, do you have to be careful about, let's say, keeping your location unknown of where you're staying and everything as a foreigner in these places?
I think it really depends where you are and what you're covering and what you do. But I think as a good rule of thumb, regardless of where you are in the world, whether you are, at home for my case, Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
or sort of any other safe place, I think it's good practice to be not posting locations in real time.
Yeah.
I think that's a good habit to get into, or geotagging everything. So just as a general rule, I usually avoid that and certainly don't do it in real time. And then when I am in different countries, I just think it's always, better to be a little bit under the radar than it is to sort of especially if it is a conflict zone and you are, potentially doing things that are going to anger people. I think it's just, it's something that's a good rule of thumb, just to be a little bit mindful of that. But it really does depend on the place as to how
Okay.
mindful of that you need to be.
Yeah. And would you say that your let's say your day-to-day life is similar or very dissimilar in each place that you go to?
Yeah, again, it's so depending on what you're going after. If you're working breaking news, then there may be a lot more. You have to kind of run to many more different places. You've got to come home quicker and transcribe. But if I'm in a place where I'm not really planning to do any writing till I come home, so my goal is just to sort of gather as much information as possible, and then you may be able to take longer interviews. You sort of be able to enjoy the cultural experience maybe a little bit more, because you are crafting a story in your head, but you don't need to get it out sort of straight away. So I think in that respect, it really depends on what you are trying to achieve in the story. But as a general rule, in most war zones you're working in, you are, it's sort of getting up, it's checking the news, it's touching base again with your team, with your contacts, figuring out where you're going to be that day, what's on the agenda, where you need to go, what interviews you need to get, or footage that you need to acquire. And so those principles are the same. It's very much production and planning, and then figuring out the best way to execute.
Is it like if you go to a place maybe with the idea of wanting to write a book, like coming out of it, do you go in there and it takes a while to adjust and like to maybe to gather a plan of what you're going to do, or do you have it figured out by the second that you're there?
Yeah, I think again it comes down to how much time you have. certainly in my younger years, when you could go to a place for long periods, I always went in with the idea of what it is that I wanted to do. I never went in completely blind. I know some people prefer that, but I think having some structure about what I want is really important.
Yeah.
So I always went in with ideas, but you can allow yourself maybe a little bit more time to gather those or figure out what that's going to be. I think now, this phase in my life as a mom, I don't have that sort of same time luxury anymore. I can't go and live in a place the way that I could previously. And so because you are in a little bit more of a time constraint, you have to be a little bit more prepared in advance, I think, and really have your ducks in a row before you get there so that you can hit the ground running and be as productive as possible so that you aren't wasting time.
Yeah. Okay. And is there anywhere that you've already been to that you wouldn't go back to, or you wouldn't like to go back to?
That I wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't think there's anywhere that I wouldn't go back to. I certainly think there's a number of places that wouldn't want me to go back there, where I wouldn't be very welcome and would probably make the wise decision to not go just because I don't think it would be particularly safe. But there's nowhere in the world that I'd say that I wouldn't want to go to if I felt that I could function and work safely, and the opportunity was right. I would, but I think, yeah, there's always so much to learn from places we've been to, and of course, new places again.
Okay. And when you go to these places, are you able to live a life kind of similar to your life at home, or is it kind of like flipping the script completely and you live a sort of like different life to, let's say, life at home?
I mean, you're always going to be living a somewhat different life when you're there. You don't have your friendship circles, you don't have the sort of social things that you do, and so there, life is going to be different. It's going to be very work focused, and you sort of don't have the distractions that you do at home in everyday life, and the creature comforts that certainly make being home
Yeah.
extra special. But I do still take with me certain things. Like, I'll always try to work out, in the morning first thing. If it's somewhere safe and the weather is good, obviously go for a run or do a workout in my hotel room, wherever I'm staying, even if that's just, some yoga poses and a stretch. I certainly like to start my day. And so that's something that's sort of part of my home life that I always take with me no matter where I am in the world.
Yeah.
And just sort of, that's kind of the basis. And then I think you have to be open to experiencing a different culture and a different place and different foods and different people. And I think that's the beauty of travel, is that we want to be a little bit out of our comfort zone.
Yeah. Was there any food that you tried, especially during your time in the Middle East, that like stands out to you as being like just really good?
Really good. Oh, I love Middle Eastern food, so I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of like just all of it, the different dips and the different tastes, and that sort of Mediterranean, the fish. So I'm a big Middle Eastern fan. I also love spicy food. So you
Yeah.
can take me to anywhere, Pakistan, India, Thailand, wherever there is spicy food, I'll down that a lot
Nice.
too. So I'm lucky I don't have food allergies. So I try to yeah, take advantage of the food. And when I'm at home, life is a lot more simple, obviously. But I think when you're traveling, that's one of the beautiful parts of a new culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And is being a war journalist and a writer in these places, is it a lonely job, or is it like kind of nice in the way that you're working in part of like a small team?
I think for the most I mean, you have your team, as I said, and that's really important. And always for me, the number one person is the fixer or the translator, and they sort of help you translate. They set up meetings for you. They're a local who hopefully has good contacts and sort of a good rapport with the community that can really help you push your work forward. But I think that in many ways, even though you do have that team and that's important, writing is a pretty lonely profession, because I think oftentimes you've got these stories, and especially if they're heavy, you're sort of taking those on and trying to navigate how to best put them out in the world. And I think that at times for me has become very lonely, because when the fixer goes home, the driver goes home, you're home by yourself. It's basically you and a computer, and you're trying to figure out what to do next, how to do justice to the story. And so I think that's very different than being, a TV reporter or somewhere where you sort of have a producer or a cameraman and maybe a little bit of a bigger team.
Yeah.
But I think writing, it's sort of both the blessing and the curse. It's the ability to be able to work independently, which I love, but also, just you have to be able to be fairly self-disciplined, but okay with your own time as well.
Okay, and is there anywhere that the Wi-Fi was just absolutely shocking for the duration of
Oh,
time
a
you
lot
were?
of, I mean, just a lot of places.
Oh, really?
As I said, it's that part, if you're on breaking news, certainly makes it hard. But sort of in the latter part of my career, I've kind of moved away from breaking news, which, takes the pressure off a little bit, because then you can just kind of focus on the task at hand and gathering information and not have to worry about filing or checking emails and all of those things. So, but yeah, a lot of parts of the world, you're probably, it can be days. So, and that's kind of I mean, we all think that's really nice to take that digital break, but it also can be really, for me, anxiety producing, because I just want to know everything is okay in the outside world. I want to know my family's okay. I
Yeah.
want to know that there's nothing gazillion things piling up. I don't want to think about having 500 emails to read down the second I get back to civilization. So that is something I've never quite grasped
Yeah.
on a comfort level, just because, I still, I find it very anxiety producing being out of touch with the world.
And when you come home from doing one of these projects, does it take a couple of weeks to like adjust to coming back home, or is it easy?
I think, I think the longer you're away, certainly the harder it is, because the more of a routine that you get into. So I think it's especially hard if it's been a particularly hard assignment where you might have seen a lot, you've certainly spoken to a lot. There's been a lot of heaviness, and so I think when you take on that heaviness and then you sort of immediately, snap your fingers and you're back into bustling urban environment, and people are obviously living their lives, and the news is very different, and so I think that can be very it's a bit of a shell shock for a while, and I know for me it's certainly in many cases taken a while to adapt, and so you just have to give yourself a little bit of that grace period, I think, just to recognize that living in a safe place and worrying about trivial things instead of sort of trying to shame people or shame them or push those things away. You just want to be able to, think of it as a bit of a luxury that you get to worry about such things. And all problems are real, regardless of how big or small or where they stem from. But I think it gives you perspective. But I think, that grace period is really key.
Yeah, and do you find can you still enjoy like traveling for like relaxation, or is it now kind of a thing where it's just traveling for work?
I mean, I'll always be looking for work no matter where I am. Not necessarily looking for work, but looking for a story. Certainly that was the case for a long time. I've actually gotten better about it now. But it's still, always some sort of sense of adventure. My partner and I, he's a big diver, I'm a big diver. So often our vacations will be to, go shark diving or something somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
So it still has to have that bit of a sense of adventure in it, I think. So it's never really like a lay down vacation, but I think I think about as I've gotten older, and especially being a mom, you do learn to appreciate a little bit downtime that I certainly never could before. So I've
Yeah.
gotten better.
That's good. That's nice. And do you think being a mother does it make you like think about risks that maybe beforehand that maybe wouldn't have crossed your mind?
Yeah, I think you have to think about those things. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily changed the way that I approach my work or stopped me from doing things. I mean,
Yeah.
I've always been a fairly good judge of, what is and isn't worth it. And I don't, and I still use that same barometer. But I think it's certainly very natural that you have to think about, how much is worth it, and you have to just be mindful in your approach. But I'd like to think that regardless of whether you are a mother or not, that's just an important trait to have, because if you're going to sort of go in and do a story, you have to be aware of the people around you. Like I said, the driver, the fixer, the other people in your team, and you don't want to be endangering them unnecessarily. So it's about more than just you. But that, having said that, stories are still important, and we make choices to do this work. Nobody's forcing us to do it. And so, I think if you're going to sort of put the effort in to get that story, then you need to sometimes push boundaries that can be a little uncomfortable, especially for people on the outside and the people that love you.
Yeah. When you first started going into like war reporting and war journalism, was your family surprised? Were they a bit shocked at first?
Yeah, they never really adapted to it. I still think now, I mean, they're not adapted to it. They'll never adapt to it. I think, yeah, it's been hard for them, and I think, it's been hard for them, and you can only imagine the sort of stress, I think. And so again, it takes a little bit of growth and maturity to recognize how hard it is on other people, I think, too, especially when you're young and you're really into it. It is all about you, and there's a certain selfishness to it, and it can be frustrating when you're like, oh, my dad is saying this, and this, and he doesn't support me, and da 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 da. And so I think, again, with growth and time, you recognize that, God, it must be hard to, as a parent or a sibling, or to sort of watch someone you love kind of walk into danger, and not always be able to contact them, not know that they're okay. And so I think, I think it takes, you have to appreciate those that love you and those that are around you, even if at times it can feel like it's unsupportive. That's not the intention.
Yeah. And is it like when you first finished your journalism course, did you do more like formal training in war journalism, or is it kind of just you kind of learn a few basics before you go over there, and you don't actually have to do a course?
I did no formal training. I didn't even study journalism.
Oh,
I was
really?
sort of working I did studied writing, screenwriting, media arts and production, and sort of focused on human rights issues. But I didn't plan to be a journalist. I was actually a ballet dancer. I fell into journalism just basic on an internship when I was studying. So it wasn't a planned career for me. And I loved writing, but again, it wasn't something I immediately pursued or thought of. So so that's basically how I fell into it, and I didn't do any sort of formal training. I just I learned as I went, and
Yeah.
read a lot and listened to people that have been doing this for a lot longer than I, and just tried to absorb as much as I can. And I'm still learning. I think
Yeah.
that's key. Is you're still a student. There's still so much you don't know about countries, places, people, and so I think you do have to be that lifelong student who's very receptive to learning and growing, and recognizing that there's a lot more out there that we all need to know. So I certainly still sometimes feel like I'm just very much a rookie.
Yeah, it's interesting. If there's always something to keep on learning, that must be like, I don't know, like a really like a push factor to keep going. It's like, oh, there's always stories out there to find. And
Yeah, it is. And I think if you're going to do this work, you do it because you love to tell stories. That always has to be key. You have to have a certain adventurous spirit, I think, and be comfortable with being uncomfortable for long periods. And it's not a career where you generally, unless you're in a very small minority of maybe network TV journalists, that you're not going to make a huge amount of money. It's not going to be sort of if you want to go and make money, go and work for a hedge fund, or
yeah,
do something, or take an entrepreneurial leap. I think we're very much a different breed of people, in that we're very much in it for the story. You have to be in it for humanity. I certainly don't know any successful foreign correspondents who aren't in it, who don't care about the people that they're covering. So I think you have to be in it for that,
yeah,
and really just in it for the life and the memories, and recognize that there are the sacrifices you were going to make, and you may not have the lifestyle that other people around you do, but you certainly will have the memory. So yeah, you have to take that sacrifice, but know that there is a beautiful reward with that.
Yeah. And in your book, Only Cry for the Living, you spoke with many different people from various backgrounds, and you actually spoke to terrorists themselves in the book, for the book.
Yes.
What was this like? Was this a bit of a scary interview to go into?
I think it was more just, I mean, I was, still am a very curious person, and so um, I think it's really important to tap into that mindset and to tap into what how these people think. And I think we often in the West and in journalism want to paint situations and people as black and white, good and bad, and we don't spend enough time in the gray areas, in the nuances, trying to understand what it is that drives people, what it is that sort of compels people to do what they do. So from that perspective, I really, I think that has been a sort of a hallmark of my career, is to do that wherever possible. And so those sorts of interviews aren't easy to kind of
Yeah.
arrange and set up. It's a lot of work, but I think it's very crucial to get those perspectives.
And was there any terrorists or people that you wouldn't expect to be nice that were generally nice towards you during the interviews?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, like, people were very I mean, they were never forced to talk to me. People spoke to me because they wanted to tell their story, they wanted to have their story told. Oh,
Yeah.
nice to meet. Yeah, so I mean, yes, oftentimes, yeah, that they're relative. I mean, each case varies, but relatively polite. I remember one particular terrorist, I think he was from Belgium, and he was an ISIS terrorist who was arrested in Syria. But yeah, I remember him being like, sort of asking me, trying to get a sense of the outside world, and just, yeah, being sort of
Really nice.
surprised about, and sad that he had, I guess, had made that mistake, had become radicalized and gone and joined this group believing in some greater thing, and he's ruined his life for it,
Yeah.
and it's sad because, yeah, a young person probably could have contributed a lot more to the world, but that he went down that path, and so that is, it's sad and unfortunate.
Yeah. And after let's say an interview with someone, as a war journalist or author, do you have to keep contact with the people that you do an interview with?
No, I mean, if it's someone that I have an ongoing relationship with, I certainly try to keep in contact.
Yeah.
WhatsApp and things is great for that, but to keep that rapport, I certainly wouldn't want to leave someone in the lurch, but it does become impossible after a while, just because you're in so many places dealing with so many people. So there is a finite number of people that you can stay in contact with in time. And so it is unfortunate sometimes when you lose contact, because I think about, I'll have to be lying in bed and I think about different people that I've encountered and met and wonder how they are and what they're doing. And
Yeah.
I'm, sad that I, don't have contact with them anymore. But social media helps. But yeah, again, not everyone's on social media. People's numbers change. Life goes on. And
Yeah.
that's the unfortunate reality of it. And you just would hope that they're doing okay.
Yeah. I read earlier on today that you worked with Infinity Ward to help create Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I thought this was really
Oh,
interesting. What was
yeah,
this like?
no,
And how'd it come about?
yeah, I was a consultant on that, and it was Modern Warfare from several years ago. I think it came out in, I can't remember, 2018, 2019. I'd have to look it back up. But yeah, it was very cool because it was they were sort of doing, I guess at the time it was sort of a Syria Kurdish type storyline, and I'd spent a lot of time there, and so yeah, they sort of reached out, kind of looking more for the human story, the human side of it, and so
Mm.
hopefully I was able to kind of give them a little bit of perspective and the a little bit of the human side, so it wasn't just all gun battles and combat.
Yeah. And was this your first time do something like this?
Yeah, I'm not a gamer. I couldn't tell you anything about games. I'm definitely, that's not my thing. But yeah, so that was my first time. But yeah, I learned a bit. But I'm still not a gamer.
And my final question for today is, do you have a piece of work that you're the most proud of, that after you're finishing, you're just so happy with?
Oh, I've actually written, no, it hasn't come out, and it may never come out, or it may take a long time to come out. I wrote sort of a memoir of all the different places, starting from the influences of my childhood through to the many different countries I visited, from Burma to Yemen to parts of Africa to Latin America, and then the experiences of coming home, how you sort of navigate these two very different worlds, personally and professionally. And I really love that I put together that, and that it's there and hopefully sees the light of day at some point in time. So I'm actually really proud of that
Yeah.
work, and I look forward to hopefully someday people seeing it if there's an appetite for it.
So thanks a million for coming on today, and thank you for just sharing your stories with us.
Of course, thank you for having me, and best of luck.
Thank you, Hollie, for coming on to the podcast, and as well, thank you to the listener for listening in. And yeah, I really enjoyed doing this episode of the podcast. It was very, very interesting to hear stories of a war journalist. It's a very extreme line of work. It's let's just say it's not a walk in the park. It doesn't seem like maybe what's an easy, like a sales associate or something along the lines of that, if you know what I mean. But yeah, so thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. And here's a little secret. There is a solo episode coming out in a few days' time, so please stay tuned. Au revoir.